So I say I suffer, and I think that is probably the best word to describe it, because it's been fucking hell at times. Mental health and dealing with it. I've thought I've been the macho geezer and I can, like boxing, I'll fight, and you think your biggest battle is sometimes with yourself.
Always.
Yeah, and sadly, when I was talking to my mum, sadly that woman got the age of 58, and they were just starting to delve into the theory that she might be bipolar, and she was too far down the rabbit hole really for
any kind of intervention.
Yeah, and it didn't transpire. I tried to work with doctors, family tried to step in, and it didn't work out. And it's so sad that my mother got the age of 58 and she'd lived so many years in turmoil. And I think, fucking hell, that could have been prevented. Like that. She could have been here now with my little boy at my wedding next year. And it could have been prevented. And that is the fucking saddest thing about mental health, man. And I'll tell you something, I count my blessings that I'm 32 and it took me years to establish where I was at. And I'll be honest, I went to some dark places.
Well, you've
I was telling you, and you know them. It's funny because my best mate is not something we sort of, we're always joking and stuff, and we don't talk about mental health. But when I came home, I couldn't hide it. When I was having a breakdown, and I had to just come clean and tell him I was going to like therapy and where I was at, where my head was at. And at the time, my sister had 2 daughters, and the youngest daughter calls us a BFF. She would have been, what was I then? She would have been 7. And we were like that, aye. And when I came back, it like made a life that I'd come back.
And it gives you strength, I imagine.
My mate said to me, he goes, I'll never forget one escalator in town. We'd been shopping, and I'm telling him about that thing about I was thinking about killing myself every 15 minutes, and I'd pictured how I was doing it, and he was like, that's heavy, man. And he said to us, imagine what Rachel would have been like if you'd have done that. And he said, imagine what you'd have been like now if you'd have just took your life. And I was just like, it was so powerful, man. It was like I'd been hit with a fucking ton of bricks, and I was like, holy fuck. But at that time, I couldn't think of Rachel. I couldn't think of my dad. I couldn't think of anyone. My head was gone. And like I say, people who are listening to this now that will be suffering from mental health, it's often people that are like, you think that you're super strong, and we're all human beings, right? And I had to be the one that was there for my family through a lot of shit. And I was basically felt like I was holding up the fort. Yeah. And I took so much on. Looking back, God, I was a kid.
Ran out of everything.
And it just, how I think about mental health, right? It's like an elastic band, and you can stretch it and you can stretch it and you take on so much pressure, and one day it just fucking snaps, and you don't dictate that day. You don't know when that day is going to come, but it comes. And you could, like you say, you could be Tyson Fury. You could be you could be able to lift this garage. You could lift that car outside, but you are not beating your mental health mind. If it's coming for you and you've tried to hide from it, it will get you if you're not prepared, and you're not. And if you're not willing to sit there and say, I'm in a bad place here, and I need to work at this, and I need to, it's bad times. And my mum wasn't ready to address those problems. She found a solution in the bottom of that bottle, and it was temporary, and it just made things
worse.
Of course it does.
Compounds.
It just compounded it, yeah. And like this was quite a powerful thing for me, right? So I'd come back, and through all my years of living with my mum's alcoholism, she'd never ever admitted she had a problem. And that one of the hardest things for me living with it was that it didn't matter what literally, we could have the police at the house that night. There could have been nearly a murder. They'd get up the next day and her and my dad would just go to work.
Onward.
Make a cup of tea. And me and my sister would be sat there or I would be sat there on my own thinking, am I going crazy? What the hell's going on? Do you know what I mean? And I'm finding bottles of this in the soap powder boxes and I'm putting her to bed and she can't speak and she'd go missing. Nobody know where she'd been. And then the next day it was just and then people are like, oh, your mum, she's a lovely woman. And I'm like, yeah, I know she is, but
so confusing to a young mind, to some. And on the last podcast with Nominee, we talked about his dad was a big drinker and his mum, and it's very similar. And they kind of kept something together, a unit together to a degree, but it's only now since he's had therapy and things where they look back and there's so many triggers and so much of the thing that we discuss, which is just being together. Mate. Just actually being together, not just being in the fucking place together and you're doing that and I'm doing this, but you're home from school, I'm on my knees,
you're a unit,
tell me about your day, come sit with me, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, right, I'm going to put you in bed, we're going to read you, and you've been together, that
like bath time with my boy. I'll come in from work, it doesn't matter what's happening, I'll sit in that bath and we have a bit of crack, and like you say, I take him in, I get him ready for bed and we read a story. You can't buy that, man.
That is the fucking stuff.